It's my pleasure to introduce our respondents, and we will have some time for questions at the end, quite a lot of time. But what we'll do is we'll move on to our manuhiri, our guests from Ahitereiria, or I heard the Kai Kōrero this morning talk about it as the land of the sleeping land or the dreaming land in Te Reo Māori. I can't remember the exact phrase, but welcoming you from across the ocean to come and speak to us. And our speakers are Stephen Healy, Associate Professor Stephen Healy, and Professor Abby Mellick Lopes, who are both living in Sydney, Australia. And the reason we invited them is they have just done such a long series of circular economy projects over many years, both together and separately. And they've explored so many aspects of circular economy with city councils, with business, with community groups, including very diverse community groups from many different cultural backgrounds with a lot of different cultural knowledge of reuse and repair and many of the other aspects of circular economy that we're interested in. So I'm just going to read a summarised version of their bios so you can remind yourself of what you signed up for on Eventbrite. So Stephen Healy is an award-winning teacher and author whose research explores processes of social transformation. His recent work on the circular economy explored how local identities, skills and practices have shaped sustainable production. He is co-author of the new book, Solidarity Cities, Encountering Racial Capitalism, Mapping Transformation, and one of my favourite books of all time, Take Back the Economy, An Ethical Guide for Transforming Our Communities. He's Associate Professor of Geography and Urban Studies at Western Sydney University. Abby Mellick Lopes researches the role of design in supporting the transition to a more sustainable and socially just urban futures. She recently completed a project titled Investigating Innovative Waste Economies, Redrawing the Circular Economy, which explored the rich diversity of economic practices that contribute to social and technical innovation in waste. So many interesting stories Abby has to tell you about urine diversion and really like nitty-gritty of how you do waste. Yeah. She edited the book Design Repair, Place, Practice and Community, and she's a Professor of Social Design in the School of Design at the University of Technology, Sydney. So I just welcome you up. You've got 20 minutes to respond a bit to Jay, to give us a sense of your own research and what you bring into the room as circular economy experts. As Jay said, he wasn't a circular economy expert. We're keen to hear from you. And then afterwards, we'll have a time of discussion with all three speakers. Yeah, give them a round of applause. Are you okay both standing here for our cameras? Yeah.
I guess I'll have to hold my notes.
You can go first.
Okay, yeah. Thanks very much, Kelly, for the invitation, and thanks as well, Jay, for sharing all of your knowledge with us. We received the talk yesterday, so I think what we're aiming for here is sympathetic resonance more than a kind of playback of all the incredible things that you shared with us. But there are a number of points of contiguity that I just thought I would begin by mentioning. And one is thinking about tomorrow's speaker, Joan Tronto, and her emphasis on care. Late in her life, in about 2017, I remember Kelly and I reading this paper in the US where she was saying, look, the problem is homo economicus, is a sort of very diminished understanding of what value is. And what we need is a new term, which she called hominus curans, the caring person. And for me, that directly connects to that idea of escalating reciprocity. That was fascinating for me. And again, just thinking about my intellectual genealogy, it really connects with Elinor Ostrom's concept of complex adaptive system management, that the collective care of commons requires sort of continuous improvisation and revisiting that endures over time, and that she was able to document commons that have listed for hundreds and hundreds of years, far longer than any joint stock corporation that I'm aware of anyway. So for thinking about durability, it's important. And why is durability important? Because we've got massive challenges like climate change that are going to require all hands on deck and intergenerational response under uncertain conditions. So again, thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jay. I really appreciate the generosity of your work and its clarity and visual language, as I said to you before, and I find it really powerful and seductive from a design perspective. I think just thinking about what Stephen's just said, I think one of our challenges is that there are other things escalating in the world. There are bad, harmful things escalating in the world that are powerful. And so I have somewhat of a question, which is, how do we cost those harms? In a sense, your story about the CEO did that. It's a comparison. But I think we need to be able to make visible and point to those things that are growing exponentially and causing harms, that are diminishing our capacity to care, to common, to build reciprocity, to build relationships, and kind of tearing and attenuating those social ties. So yeah, we're hitting up against our capacities as human beings somewhere, in some ways. I'd love to talk to you about AI. I feel, like an AI vegan. I feel like I feel, conflicted, and I'd love to know more about how you are managing that. So yeah, I had a question, I guess around the costing of harms. We don't have to respond to those questions now. I think the other thing I just wanted to really, in terms of resonance, was to think about designing in time, thinking through time. We are often thinking about succession planning, like we work with communities where there are elders, and in some senses they are situated in broken worlds, and it's very difficult to think across time in the way that you have so beautifully demonstrated. Really would love to learn more about that. Just one final thing in terms of bringing care together with materials. Circular economy is so much about materials, the material, physical, biophysical world. And a long time ago, at the early days of what used to be called eco-design, at the birth of these kinds of industrial ecology, circular kinds of ideas, the Wuppertal Institute in Germany had this device. I'm not an economist, so I may get this very wrong, but it was called material input per unit of service. And why I found that so interesting was you can serve that measure through fast fashion, consumption, lots of products. So each unit of service, it can be a single-use thing that comes in plastic and you throw it away. But the material input per unit of service, if you expand the service, the sharing of things, the care and longevity of things, so that use life of material things is expanded, then the material impact per unit of service can be vastly diminished, because you expand the consecutive and concurrent users. I don't like that language, but you know what I mean, the social side. I think that might be a measure that we could think about using, in a sense, to value caring for products and materials in time, because one of those escalating things is single-use plastics, and that's causing so much harm to all of us and country as well. Thank you. Yeah. So.
We've got a script.
Yeah, for our talk.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. Okay. I won't explain that image. That came from Stephen. You can ask questions later. I'm from School of Design, but I'm often very critical of design. So it's one of those strange situations, and this is a little critical. But so this is the Ellen MacArthur Foundation version of the circular economy. You may be familiar with it, the so-called butterfly diagram, which is in wide circulation in Australia. It's based on, and when you look at it, it's actually quite confusing, especially a long way away, but it's essentially a splayed diagram of kind of technical and biological nutrients cycling in perpetual motion, and creating zero waste situation, very minimal leakage down the bottom. And it comes from design thinking. It comes from Michael Braungart and William McDonough's book Cradle to Cradle, which really emphasised this idea of waste equals food. Waste is bad. Waste doesn't happen in nature, and so we need to replicate this kind of beauty and abundance and perpetual value of circulation of value that is in nature. Now, we find this model problematic in both what it says rhetorically as an image, but also in what it does. What it says every time it's reproduced is that circularity is perfectly circular, involves singular, coherent flows of value, all lines are equivalent, free from hindrance and contamination, and results only in minimal leakage. The mess of the current world is simply erased. What it does, that model, is to promote a vision of circularity that is both replete and at scale. This vision informs, in a very direct manner, policy and expectation, but it is not grounded in the reality of the effort of actually making circular economies, which are typically nascent, socially led, small scale, and far from clean. And certainly do not fit with that sort of idealised vision of the circular economy. Hence the crucial stage of experimentation, of learning, and all the time that that process takes is both devalued and overlooked. There is an assumed objectivity here, which is what Donna Haraway calls a God trick, in which we, the perceiver of the model, are everywhere and nowhere, benevolently omnipresent. Where we stand, our position is entirely absent. What's dangerous about the model, and this is a model, a representation, not a framework to think with like many of Jay's frameworks or other frameworks coming from the community economies. These are tools to think with. They're not models that we have to kind of, in a sense, aspire to or reach. What's dangerous is that it speaks first and speaks with both authority and a capitalocentric logic that erases economies, and I'm quoting Kelly here, as spaces of heterogeneity and difference. It is received as though it is something that can be achieved, or in fact has already happened, a fait accompli. And it's like we've come into the middle of a story and are locked out of contributing. The circular economy as a singular model fails to acknowledge and account for what we know is central to economic change, and that is social and, what Kelly said before, cultural innovation. This is not because novel ideas are not important in the development of circularity, but because the circular subjectivities, and I circle them here, of the consumer and the user are cogs in the circular machine. They really dominate and foreclose on other subject positions, the social innovator, the social learner, the carer, as Stephen said before. There's no room for a collective of more than one. I'm quoting Gibson Graham there, a we, an I thou, quoting Martin Buber, or an us two, quoting Tyson Yunkaporta. And yet, there are many versions of circularity other than the butterfly diagram.
Okay. So working with others across a range of projects, we find the diverse economies framework is a powerful entry point for surfacing the we, the I and thou, the us too, that do the work of circularity. For the past 2 decades, the diverse economies iceberg has worked to reframe economy as a space of heterogeneity, replete with different kinds of organizations, forms of exchange, practices of labor, ways of caring for commons and ourselves, and means of investing in a shared future. Appropriate for this talk, Clyde Binder replaces the iceberg with a diverse economies compost heap and its fermentations. In both our research and teaching, these figures do important work, not pointing to something new, but rather locating us inside the story, one whose end we don't already know, and it's exciting for precisely that reason. So we're now going to talk about 2 projects that challenge the dominant framing of circularity, the EMF version, putting collective social innovators, experimenters, and learners at the center of efforts to respond to the challenge of organic and electronic waste in our 2 examples. In each case, we found people working within organizations and across networks, elbows deep in the material, revaluing what is seemingly wasted, repairing, reusing, and even reinventing what's been cast off. So in this project, investigating innovative waste economies, we both worked on that project. We collaborated with Michelle Zybots, who is a transport planner and farmer, 3 coffee roasters, a multinational parent corporation, a social enterprise, and local councils to develop an innovative response to the challenge of organic waste. Oh, sorry. That's actually Michelle's sister shoveling compost. So we explored reverse design logistics, the circular process of moving organic waste from urban sites and spaces back onto farms where they can serve as a rich conditioner for improving depleted soils and maintaining their fertility. Organic waste was a key focus for several reasons. The City of Sydney is looking to achieve 70% waste diversion from local landfill by 2030. That's 4 years from now. Organic matter is half of that waste stream, and if left to rot in landfill, organics cause significant greenhouse gas emissions. Organic waste can be a major problem for urban waste management sites as it's smelly, it gets moldy, and it's often contaminated by other materials, such as plastics from fruit stickers to serving utensils, and it can also be hazardous to handle. The forward supply chain that moves food from farm to fork is in working order. There is a significant challenge in logistical challenges in collecting and moving organic waste from city to farms that need working out, and the devil is in the details. For these reasons, we focused on spent coffee grounds as a relatively clean and abundant waste stream, potentially separated at the source by baristas everywhere. There are huge benefits for getting this right. Composting this material mitigates climate risks, supports waste diversion targets, while also improving soil productivity and water retention, and it contributes to farmland viability, and worms love it. Okay, so Michelle operates out of Hartley Vale, which is 130 kilometers west of Sydney's CBD, growing organic garlic for Sydney's wholesale market. With help from her family, oh, sorry, this is you. All right.
No, keep going.
We're trying to share the load here. Michelle has spent the past several years hauling organic waste, principally spent coffee grounds, but also dehydrated food waste from UTS campus to her 12-acre farm and composting it in windrows on her land, attracting the attention of other farmers. Michelle drew for us a version of a circular economy in her region, identifying people with whom she currently has relationships and those she wanted to draw into the conversation. You can take over now. Sorry, mate.
Oh, it's fine. Okay. So in December 2022, we held a collaborative design workshop in the design lab at the University of Technology, Sydney, to invent the circular supply chain with representatives drawn from Michelle's current and future social network. So we took her diagram and we invited people that she both already had relationships with and people she wanted to meet and draw in. We've actually found the workshop to be a powerful format for collaborative design work, opening a time-bound discursive space of rich interdisciplinary encounter and sharing. Importantly, the workshop privileges the agency and creative capacity of people to problematise the systems they're already caught up in and to collaborate in designing preferred futures, drawing upon their expertise, what they already know and what they already do. As one participant remarked, getting the entire supply chain in the room to do this inventive work had never in their experience been done before. In our workshop-based approach, we use visualisation as a tool to support participation and elicit creative contributions. Before the workshop, we developed a presentation to sensitise participants to the challenge and asked them to bring an object, image or a material that represents circularity to them to the workshop. I mean, that was effective for a lot of reasons, not least that a lot of the stuff was kind of smelly and visceral, and it was like the circular economy is this, not that thing that Ellen MacArthur says it is. So for the introductory exercise, participants sat in a circle with a centrepiece canvas, hand-drawn, because it's far more inviting of participation than beautifully developed canvases that people don't want to touch because they're too pretty, so we tend to rip paper and draw on them by hand. People took turns introducing themselves and the material they'd brought and placed them in the centre of the circle. This process provoked immediate connections. For example, one of the coffee roasters had brought in a waste material, a byproduct of the coffee roasting process called chaff, and this was a new material for many of us in the circle. They said they were looking to reuse this substance, which was currently going to landfill, and 3 hands shot up and said, oh gosh, I'll take it to use on my farm. So it was that kind of economisation that was sort of happening in the room. For the second activity, participants gathered around a 4-metre map of the circular supply chain placed on the floor of the design lab, which kind of made it coherent. We were all working on the same thing, we're all in this together. The map represented the reverse logistics of getting spent coffee grounds back onto the land from waste production, sorting and separation, hauling, composting and farming. This process elicited conversations and problem solving up and down the chain just by talking to people and getting a sense of a shared language all together as a kind of source of a sort of different way of doing things. After the workshop, we synthesised the data into a report and translated participants' ideas into diagrams such as this to facilitate further discussion. The workshop helped to identify several important issues which weren't necessarily planned. New material values, so it identified the value of certain waste materials like chaff, which had great value at the farm end as a bulking agent in compost. It identified several key practical matters and questions such as how much material can be collected, who will collect it, how often, how do we value this, how can we leverage truck backfill journeys and disused council land, how can we sort of enrol all of that, what is to hand into the process, and finally, how can we best work within the current rules while the regulatory environment, and as we know with organics, or maybe it's different here, like everything else better here, I don't know, it's taking a while to catch up. So how can we move around the rules until that context changes? And finally, a really key issue for everyone was the importance of collecting data to measure the benefits at each point in the chain and to communicate impact and value through storytelling. And that was a challenging one because, as the hauler said, I never collect waste without collecting data, but the idea of a data commons or sharing of that mechanism wasn't there yet. So that was also something that needed to be invented. Probably the most significant thing that the workshop achieved was it helped build a social alliance. The sharing of knowledge and innovative practical ideas did more than 1,000 reports could do because everyone in the room was learning on the job already and being valued for what they already know and do. What we were really missing was the orchestration of that collective, and that's what the workshop helped to achieve. As Michelle said, the technology is actually very easy. It's the social organisation part of it that is hard. In the 18 months since the initial workshop, we've continued to meet with the group to plan a larger pilot as a basis for ongoing social learning. You learn more about the problems and the solutions this way, but it's all good, right? You're kind of developing your resilience. In the process, we've widened the circle to include multinationals operating in the same industry, farmers working on larger acreages with experience in commercial composting, and other potential industry partners.
Okay. Did you miss that last paragraph there?
Yeah. I'm not sure about that paragraph.
Better move on then. On the fly editing. Okay, so we're going to talk about a second project here, and we're coming in for a crash landing at this point. So the second project we wanted to talk about was one looking at the benefits of reuse, social, economic, and ecological. In the Measuring the Benefits of Reuse project, we partnered with Charitable Reuse Australia, which is the peak body in the sector. So this project involved developing a framework to calculate the value of reuse using point-of-sale data. We didn't realize we could just borrow it from Jay's website, as well as qualitative approaches for capturing the meaning and significance of reuse. So one organization we worked with was a project called Substation 33, which is a subsidiary of a faith-based organization, YSF, that works in disadvantaged Logan County just south of Brisbane. Their primary objective is to use electronics waste and recycling to provide training and livelihood opportunities for people in Logan, including those at a distance from the labor market. So, but Substation, which is located in a disused council building from which it gets its name, began to develop something else with help from volunteers and staff. So initially, one thing that they did was they rehomed computers that were discarded from the corporate and public sector donors, computers that were used for 3 years and then the lease ends, and then they just discard them, and then they rehomed them in communities in Logan, particularly during COVID times. This was really important for young people. Then they took the graphics and memory cards from computers that they couldn't rehome, and these gleaned electronics were combined with lithium batteries to invent an array of devices. The batteries are subject to stringent testing and sorting by rate of discharge and battery life. This process takes a couple of months, and then they're put to work. So for example, Substation tech experts partnered with area high school and university students to invent road signs that light up when the flood comes in, the float goes up, the sign comes on, and then it sends an email to local councils. And in the same vein, they invented smart buoys that measure water levels in Queensland rivers. And these rivers were experiencing a 100-year flood every 2 weeks in 2022, if you'll remember that year. So this organization uses tracking to measure the process of reuse, tracking the mood, skills development, and capacities of volunteers. In the 6 hours that we were there doing interviews, former volunteers were returning to drop in, catching up, showing off babies, and reconnecting. So this is a place, not just a social enterprise. Inventive reuse unfolded through a combination of skills and materials, while meaning seemed to emanate through the people involved. Reuse's reinvention was not just in the things, but between the people, community-based organizations, universities, and local governments. So that's the Reuse's reinvention part. So if we take the circular economy as an aspirational ideal, then the image of an achievable one, it should not only be about recovering value, but also about generating future economic, ecological, and social possibilities, such as the distribution of surplus products back to communities and the environment, and the repair and care of commons that support life. We see the university, where we're currently working, as playing a crucial role in this process as a space for discovery, experimentation, data sharing, social learning, and innovation. That's it, and what do you know? It's 12 o'clock. I don't know how that happens. There's the messiness of composting. So thanks for your attention.